Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to go over my July wrap-up and my August TBR. But before we get started, make sure you have hit that like and subscribe button, ring the notification bell. That really helps my channel out and I appreciate those little clicks so much. Thanks again to everyone who has joined me for the past videos for these and for joining me in future videos. Let's get started. In the month of July, I read a total of 8 books. I had a great reading month. That's a little bit more than my average. And I read Season of Storms, a Witcher novel by Andrzej Sapkowski. I never say that right. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. The Ice Dragon by George R.R. Martin. Red Clocks by Lenny Zumas. Pretty Girls by Karin Slaughter. The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Shark Heart by Emily Habeck, and Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I also started 2 other books but haven't finished them yet, so I'll be including them a little later. Now let's take a closer look and give a little review on each of these books. Spoiler warning, in case you don't want anything ruined for you for one of these books, just skip ahead to the next one. Season of Storms by Andrzej Sapkowski is a prequel novel of the Witcher series that I feel like fell in between The Last Witch and Sword of Destiny, though it was the most recently released of the Witcher series. And I've read the entire series, but this is kind of like a tag-on novel, which I did enjoy more than I enjoyed most of the actual series. I really enjoyed The Last Witch and the Sword of Destiny, and them being kind of like monster of the week side quest type books, rather than a plot involving Ciri, who I find to be an annoying protagonist. And Season of Storms is about Geralt going on a Witcher quest, and his swords are stolen, his precious Witcher swords. One is made of steel, the other silver, and he must embark something on a side quest to recover them and all the kind of the shenanigans he gets into recovering his swords. And overall, I really did enjoy this book. I gave it 3.75 stars, which is pretty high for a Witcher novel for me. Like, the last few in this series really didn't do it for me. And I did like it, and after, the disappointment of the end of the series, I seriously needed a Witcher redemption book. I was really upset by the ending of the series. But the epilogue in particular, and I won't say anything more than this, was everything for me in this book. And I would recommend this to anyone who previously DNF'd the series. I don't feel like you really actually have to finish the series to enjoy this if you just want a Witcher book that doesn't suck. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald is a classic romance story. And I think most of us know this story just via cultural osmosis, or we've seen the movie, we've all seen the memes. So I think a lot of us know this story, but it was not at all what is advertised. It's advertised as this classic romance in the 1920s, which it is. But it's more of a soap opera. Like, these characters were such a hot mess. Almost no likable characters. They're all a mess, and they're all like selfish, snobby, rich people. And it was hard to root for literally anyone. Like, you want to find some charismatic, good things to say about Jay Gatsby, but he was really a stalker. So this book is about Jay Gatsby, who could never forget the love of his life, Daisy. And in an effort to regain her affections 5 years after they've separated, he buys a house across the lake from her and throws lavish parties in hopes that she will attend. He befriends her cousin, who has moved in next door, and lures her to like a little tea party, just under the false pretenses, and she doesn't know he's going to be there. And of course, her first love, or her old boyfriend, whatever he is just in the room, and she's a married woman now, and it's going to be messy. And it was. And I liked this book. I gave it 4 stars, and it was also a 24 in 2024 book for me, so I was glad I could check this off my list. But these rich, snobby characters really can carry on with their bullshit. Like, Tom Buchanan, he made my list of worst spouses ever. He's terrible. Daisy is just a terrible person. She's not only a terrible spouse, she's a terrible person. And Jay needs a therapist. Like, Mr. Gatsby is not fine. The only character who was remotely likable is the narrator, Nick, who is a little bit a fish out of water on Long Island amongst these rich, wealthy, snobby, drive to New York for the day for no reason people. Like, the poor guy needs to cut and run. And I did have a quote out of this book that I really, really loved, and that was, "So we drove on toward death through the cooling twilight." And it obviously is foreshadowing for what is about to happen with, if you haven't seen the movie, the Family Guy episode or anything, it's obviously foreshadowing for everything that comes up about the end of the book. But that was a beautiful quote to me. I really liked that. And I would absolutely recommend this to people, not only just people who like classics or anybody who hasn't read it, but people who love messy dramas. If you like reading romance and you love getting into the messy drama of the story, this book has got to be the grandfather of that. I would definitely recommend checking it out. The Ice Dragon by George R.R. Martin and illustrated by Louis Royo is a fantasy children's book about Adara. I think that's how you say it, Adara. Adara is a child of winter, cold and solemn. She is lonely until an ice dragon appears, a creature just as chilly as she. And it is really about a story about Adara and her family and how she's very isolated, even though her father loves her, even though her family loves her. She is very much to herself. She likes to be out in the snow. She doesn't like the summer. And the only companion she really has is this dragon that appears, and she gets closer and closer to it until she is able to claim it and ride it. Even though George R.R. Martin has said that this book has nothing to do with the Song of Ice and Fire series, he actually wrote it before the A Song of Ice and Fire series. Reading this book was like reading a book right out of Shireen Baratheon's personal library. I loved it. It's very short. It's very quick. I read this book in an hour. It's a book you can pick up and read anytime, all the time. I probably will read it again today just for funsies. It's got beautiful illustrations. The story of Adara and her dragon is just one I love. And I would highly recommend this to any and all dragon lovers. Anybody who's read the A Song of Ice and Fire series but hasn't read this, you would probably love it too. Just know that while the book is like $16 for the hardcover, I think is what I paid for it, it is short. It is short, super short. Read it in an hour, even though it's 125 pages, I think. Most of the pages are illustrated and only have a few sentences on them. So just know what you're getting into. Like, don't expect some, epic A Song of Ice and Fire, a Game of Thrones 1,000-page book, because that's not at all what you're getting. It's just a little snippet of a fantasy world with the dragon written by George, and in the end, I think that's what a lot of us love about the A Song of Ice and Fire series, so this was a special little jewel, and I did love this book. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. Anything written by George, I probably am going to automatically want to give it 5 stars. Red Clocks by Lenny Zumas is a women's fiction dystopian-ish type book, and I'll explain why I am not convinced that this is a dystopian, which is how it was marketed. This book is about the lives of 5 women in a small town after the Personhood Amendment has been passed in the United States, which grants life, liberty, and property to every embryo. We follow the stories of these women whose lives will be affected in different ways by the new law. And not only is it about how their lives are affected by the law, just how they function as women in society in general. Not only as far as this law is concerned, because I feel like one of the characters, even if you would have taken the Personhood Amendment out of the story, her life would have been probably the same. And I thought also that this book was going to be a lot more political than it was, but it read much more literary fiction to me, which was not necessarily a bad thing. I liked this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was written in a very unique way, which I really did appreciate, and it had a sense of humor that really like matched my own kind of sense of humor. And I was kind of telling all my friends, like all my girlfriends at work, about this book and calling it my vagina book because of the cover and it being an abstract painting of a vagina on the cover. And I was just talking all about this book and all about the weird things in it. And, I really did have a fun time with this book, even though the subject matter really hits home, especially it was written in 2018, but in 2024, a lot of the things in the book have come to pass. So that's why I guess it doesn't feel very dystopian. It feels quite modern. It feels quite accurate versus having a dystopian feel to it. But I did like it, and I would recommend it to, feminists. This is a book for you. Female rage, those people who enjoy female rage books, this one would be one you would like. Or in general, just people who support people with uteruses. This might be a book worth checking out. It seems either you love this book or you DNF'd this book. When I went through the reviews, there was really no in between, and I fell into the I love this book category. Pretty Girls by Karin Slaughter is a thriller, crime, and mystery novel, and trigger warnings for lots of dark themes. Violence against women galore. This book deals with snuff films, so lots of sensitive subjects in this book, so be warned. And I found this book, I discovered this book, I was recommended this book on a list of most disturbing books someone ever read. And while it does deal with very dark subjects, it does not even crack my top 10. But this book is about Claire and Lydia, who have been estranged. They're sisters and have been estranged for nearly 20 years when Claire's husband, Paul, is killed in an attempted mugging. Claire's seemingly perfect marriage unravels as she's discovered his dark secrets. With nowhere else to turn, she reaches out to Lydia, her big sister. Together, they begin to dig into the mystery of who Paul really was and what happened to their oldest sister, Julia, when she disappeared 20 years earlier. And unfortunately, I already had this plot of this book spoiled for me with the husband being into the snuff film industry, and maybe the book would have been better, maybe even 5 stars. I gave it 4 stars, but it could have been 5 stars had that been a surprise to me rather than that having been spoiled for me in the video that I saw that recommended this book. And I will also say that there was a lot of mirrors in this book to real-life serial killers. And particularly Ed Gein. There is a moment in the book where there's a photograph of a victim hung up by her feet and she has been opened up. And that directly reflects and is a mirror to Ed Gein and a picture of his final victim in her final state when she was discovered. So just be prepared that it is, in fact, a very dark book. It wasn't as disturbing as I thought it was going to be, but yes, it is very violent. It is very bloody. It is horrible things happen to these women. There's a lot of sexual aggression and sexual crimes committed, so just be forewarned. It is a very good thriller. Like, I felt like every time I was turning around, I was getting punched in the face by another twist, which I enjoyed. So if you're a thrill seeker, if you are a dark soul, if you can handle those kind of subjects, I would recommend this as a really good thriller. If you are sensitive to violence against women, do not read this book. The Time Machine by H.G. Wells is a classic sci-fi book, and it is about a time traveler who has created a machine to move through the 4th dimension, which is time. And he ends up 800,000 years into the future, and he finds a peaceful, simple, happy population known as the Eloi, and also the cannibalistic, monstrous Morlock. After his time machine is stolen, he must adventure into this new world to recover his machine and return to his own time. Now, I did love this book. I gave it 3 stars, and I will tell you why. It should have been more, but I just can't get over something. One of the characters, Weena, who is one of the Eloi, he saves her from drowning in a river because the Eloi are just too peaceful, too blasé. They don't bother helping her. They're just going to let her drown. He saves Weena and she becomes really attached to him. And, she's like, oh, don't go into the forest. Don't go into the dark. I'm scared. Like, they speak different languages, but you can really tell what she's trying to communicate. And he's like, it's cool. We're going to take off into the dark, into where the monsters are that cannibalize your people. And I figured that out, but we're going to go anyway. And she doesn't want to go, and she likes trusting him with her life, and she passes out Like, he leaves her in the forest that's on fire, filled with cannibals, like a chicken nugget in the oven. He abandons Weena, and she trusted him. You son of a bitch, how dare you leave her? I was so upset. Poor Weena. Justice for Weena, I will never get over. This is a character who deserved so much better. And I watched the movie, and the movie does not hold a candle to the book. The movie itself is enjoyable, but in a different way. But they portrayed the Eloi in a really weird way, and I didn't like that. They make them like these idyllic, beautiful people, when in the book they're described as being like munchkin-like. And that's kind of how I envision them, was like munchkins from The Wizard of Oz, but in the movie they're this all blonde, tall, beautiful people, which was really weird. But I would recommend this book to some people, particularly sci-fi fans, but also don't read this book because you're going to cry because Weena suffers a tragic chicken nugget fate. Shark Heart: A Love Story by Emily Habeck is a magical realism story, and it is about Lewis and Wren, a couple who have just gotten married and are ready to begin their lives together when Lewis is diagnosed with a rare mutation that will turn him into a great white shark. The story is of grief and loss, but also of moving forward and finding joy. And I was telling my friends about this book, and all of them said they could never get past the thought that this man is going to turn into a shark. If you can suspend your belief of, in this world, mutations, people mutate into animals in this world, right? So if you can suspend your belief and just get on board with it, you'll really find a truly moving, beautiful story. Like, it was really well written. It was really good. I gave it 4 stars, and I'm not a romance reader, and it really wasn't a romance book. It was really just a literary fiction with magical realism about grief and loss, and really it paralleled maybe having Alzheimer's or having an illness that people typically couldn't see that you were dealing and struggling with these illnesses. But if you're growing teeth and fins, people are going to notice. And that's exactly what this book explores. It was really, really good. Also, this is a safe book to read if you're an anti-spicer. This book has absolutely no spice in it, so it is safe to read if you're looking for that kind of thing. And I would recommend this book to experimental romance readers. If you want something different that maybe you've never read anything like it before, I would definitely recommend it. And it's a debut novel, so I'm really curious what else Emily Habeck might have up her sleeve. Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens is a mystery historical fiction novel. It is a very popular book. It was made into a movie recently. It is about Kaya, the marsh girl who is abandoned by all of her family by age 10 and learns to provide for herself via the marsh she calls home. Though she is alone, she has a few people who help her, fascinated by the marsh girl. And this book, my sister ranted and raved about it being her, top 10 favorite books of all time. And I thought it was just okay. I gave it 4 stars. It was enjoyable enough, but I had some serious issues with this book as a whole that I'm going to get into. And it definitely didn't make my top 10 list. It's probably not top 50. It was okay. It was fine, but it wasn't special to me. And I'm going to start with Kaya's family as a problem, because what asshole leaves a 6-year-old behind? Like, her mom leaves when she is 6 years old. Her older siblings leave when she's 6. Her dad leaves her when she's 10, and he's an abusive alcoholic, which is why her whole family left. And who leaves this kid behind? And because she's in the marsh, nobody really cares about quote-unquote marsh trash. Even the police don't enforce laws against them for the most part because they're expendable people, in their opinion, in their society. Another issue that I had with this book is how Kaya's dialect changes too dramatically when she becomes literate. She goes from being a twangy country girl to having no accent whatsoever in her dialect as you read it, which was really irritating and just not how it works at all. And she also Kaya felt like a Mary Sue. She had a tragic story, which is very typical in a Mary Sue case, but also everything came so easily to her. She learned how to read and became an amazing biologist via just reading and learning the marsh. And she's so beautiful, and everybody automatically just wants to bang her, all the guys. Like, the 2 guys that she encounters, they automatically want to sleep with her, even though she's ostracized like no tomorrow by the people in her community for being poor marsh trash. These two guys are absolutely infatuated with her and want to bed her right away. My biggest issue with this book was Chase's character, because although he was a super dickwad, right, he was not a good boyfriend or a good person to Kaya, but he also wasn't a rapist. And in this book, rape is used as a plot device for motive for her to kill him, which is part of the mystery in the book, is that in the very beginning, Chase is found dead, and we go back in time through their relationship, and he was forward with her. He was, obvious with his intentions of wanting to have sex with her, but he never was so pushy that he had rape vibes until all of a sudden she rejected him, and he did. He was not physical with her. He was not overly aggressive with her in a sexual way, and until it was needed to make the story go. And nothing irritates me more than rape as a plot device. It just wasn't necessary. And this book really couldn't decide if it wanted to be a historical fiction, literary fiction, love triangle story, or a murder mystery, so it just smashed both together. And overall, it was kind of fine, but I had some serious problems with this book. Also, another issue I had with this book was the use of the N-word. It was just so unnecessary. This book was written in modern times. Like, we could have skipped all that. And those were all 8 books I read in July. My favorite, highest rated, was The Ice Dragon, but I've also kind of got to give a special mention here to Shark Heart. It was just a really special experience. My least favorite or lowest rated book was The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, even though I really still did enjoy it. And, for my lowest rated, least favorite to be a 3-star that I enjoyed, that's just still an overall really good reading month. Now let's move on to what I'm reading in August. For the month of August, I will be focusing on finishing my library card TBR for the summer edition. I always participate in A Tale from Two Trails the Battle, and we are playing again this month. Even though we thought the game was going to end this month, it did not. The battle continues. And I also always take part in the Buzzwordathon every month. And the final book that I'll be reading this month is actually a friend pick. I promised my friend Anna that she could pick a book for me, and she did. That's what I'll be focusing on this month, and I also have a few rollovers from my last month's reading that I did not finish 2 of these books, so they will be rolling over with us into August. So let's start there. So the 2 rollover books that I have joining me this month are both from my library cards game summer edition, and that is Reclaim the Stars, which is a collection of short stories that are sci-fi and fantasy based from Central America. And also I have The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, and that was my late find for not finishing my spring TBR. And I'll probably finish The Adventures of Tom Sawyer today. Reclaim the Stars, I am teetering on DNFing it. This book might just not be for me. I'm going to give it a few more stories, a few more tries, and if I'm just not vibing with it, I'm going to DNF it and call it a day. So these 2 will be rolling over into August. Rolling right along into the rest of my library card TBR game summer edition books, there have been some changes here since the last time we went over these books. So let me just tell you really quick which ones I've changed. And it's not that I've DNF'd these books, it's that I started reading them and I'm just not in the mood for them. So the first one that I've changed was Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, which was a classic over 900 pages, has been changed to Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. The Deep by Alma Katsu, which was a historical fiction and new to me author, has been changed to Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. Confessions of a Serial Killer by Dr. Katherine Ramsland was a crime book with a weapon on the cover, and this has been changed to Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates. And honestly, I might unhaul Confessions of a Serial Killer. I gotta stop pretending I like reading true crime. I do not. And the last 2 books from my library card game that I did not change but still need to read are The Judas Blossom by Stephen Aryan, and this is a historical fiction that has a map, and South of the Buttonwood Tree by Heather Weber, which is magical realism and a brown cover. Moving on to Tales from Two Trails the Battle, hosted by Kim at Expedition Through Pages and her mother Julie. I am on Team A, that is the Team Pirates, and we did win again this month. Everybody thought the game would be over this month, but alas, the board had different ideas. It is not. The battle continues. So the prompts that we got this month are a TBR vet, book club book, and Kim recommends. To go with the first prompt, TBR vet, I am going to read a book that I've had on my TBR since, I believe, 2012, and that is Dead Until Dark by Charlaine Harris. I bought this book back when True Blood was still on the air, when it was still airing. I really love the show. I've tried to read this book once or twice before, and like Sookie's internal monologue drove me insane and I could not do it. So if it turns that way again, or if I'm in a crunch and need to double up prompts, then I might switch this book out for Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C., which has also been on my TBR probably actually a little longer, since 2011, I think, is when my friend Erica gave me that book, and I still have not read it. So if I need to have a backup, that is the plan. For the second prompt book club book, I've actually already completed Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Our TBR game for A Tale from Two Trails does not go like from the 1st to the 30th or the 31st or whatever a month. It goes from the 25th of the previous month to the 25th of the current month. And so this book does count, and it is a Reese's Book Club book, which is why it counts for me towards a book club book. And I've already completed this one. Now, the third and final prompt is Kim recommends, and this is also the group book for our team, but I will not be reading the group book. Instead, I will be reading the Penelopiad by Margaret Atwood. For the Buzzwordathon Readathon, hosted by Kayla at Books and Lala, our word this month is like. Even though I have over 300 books on my TBR between physical and ebooks, I only have one book in my entire collection that has the word like in it. And that book is Song of Silver Flame Like Night by Emily Wen Zhao. And it's got a dragon in it. It's a YA fantasy book. This should be an easy read. It's almost 600 pages, I think. It's a little bit thick, but since it's YA, it should go by pretty quickly. And the final book that we have to talk about this time is Anna's pick. That's my friend Anna from work. I promised her she could pick a book for my TBR this month, and she actually let me pick a book off her TBR list as her pick, and I chose from her list Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I don't have this physical book yet. I have ordered it. It should be here any day. And that'll bring us to the end. It is quite the ambitious TBR this month. It's 11 books, including the rollovers. Even though I'll finish one today, it's still a pretty long list. So happy reading. Let me know, what do you think of the books I'm reading? What are you reading? I would love to know. Leave me a comment down below, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye.